mountain is always there, Knocknarea in the landscape. The Cailleach is to the left. A familiar topography, open, extensive, anonymous. Land with invitations to transform. Landless land, stamped hard. With drumlins, ditches, rivers, lakes, lines, circles, delineations, printings, hidden happenings, all embossed here through the hag stone. I felt sure that my life for the next year or so would be on a trajectory that I understood.
It was during the pandemic. I was called to just a routine mammogram.
I found the lump, and the lump was, in my mind, probably a cyst, even though I had noticed that it was getting harder and it felt bigger.
There was no lump. There was nothing that any outward sign of anything problematic, apart from some blood on my nightdress.
I was away, and the minute that I got back, I went and saw my doctor. I really felt that everything was going to be fine.
It took 6 months for the team to actually identify that there was cancer.
Blocks A1, slice 1, A2, slice 2, A3, slice 3, A4.
They then kept me back a bit, and I then moved steadily down the corridor to imaging room, and then a biopsy, and then something else.
And there and then they did a biopsy, and they realised that it probably was a cancer and not a cyst.
And she looked at me and looked at my right breast and said, "Oh, that doesn't look right."
When they found it, it was so deep and my breast tissue was so dense that it did not show up on mammograms. At least 2 tumours, very deep.
I left knowing that there was probably a tumour of about 4 centimetres in my right breast.
I get 3 phone calls from the hospital saying that I need to go back to the hospital and I need to make an appointment urgently. And I was literally booked in within 2 weeks.
It was a surprise. I do remember feeling quite traumatised by just the experience of having the biopsies.
35 millimetres present in sizes 5 to 9.
Grade 2, 2, 3, 2. 15% associated DCIS, intermediate high grades, with cancerization of lobules and with marked comedo-type
I
necrosis.
took a friend of mine to help me with that.
Lymph nodes, metastatic carcinoma in 1 of 3 sentinel nodes, specimen B. The deposit measures 7 millimetres. The night before my surgery, I went down to the sea where I usually swim for sunset, and I got into the water. I felt my body spreading out while I was in the water. This huge peace came over me, and I realised that I was engaging in some kind of symbiotic molecular exchange with the water. I felt the water entering into me as I was expanding. So subconsciously, that was a very, very powerful act of healing that I now can revisit in the aftermath of everything. Transport for sweet light, ductal bright for lactal love, sonogram, a way in to see sound.
The operation was over 8.5 hours long. So I had 2 surgeons. I had the mastectomy first with one surgeon, and then I had the reconstruction with a specialist.
When they actually got in to the breast, they basically cut out the whole front section of the breast, including the nipple area, like a crescent-shaped moon type scarring, scooped it out like an ice scoop.
My doctor's dark, faint-grained, a shadow thing. A tiny newt, a Marnock beast, dark in light, Sorgadus.
And then I had it in Galway in November of 18, the full mastectomy. The surgery went fine. The next day, the stitches pulled and I had internal bleeding. So I had to go back to theatre again for another 7 hours.
I had 3 drains, one under my arm and 2 underneath the breast.
I had drains. They were not pleasant. They're quite painful.
I'd basically had a deep scar from hip to hip and a rearranged tummy button, and then obviously remanufactured breasts with this very tight bra that you have to wear for a few months in order for that to sit and set properly.
My stomach disappeared. They remade my belly button because that moved up. They had to take the skin as well, so the nipples gone, everything, and they reconstructed. So what they do is they actually sew it through my chest wall.
I had a vivid dream where a puck goat took me on his back and we flew over the land. He was showing me important places from really high up. So I asked my friend Jerusha to paint a goat on my head for protection, which she did. So I started chemotherapy, and that first day in the hospital was quite a shock because the actual syringe that they use is huge and it's filled with red liquid, and it's like something you put into an elephant to put them asleep.
But it was a high prescription. They kept saying it's going to be quite grueling. It was a prescription of 16 rounds, but the first 4 were one type of chemotherapy called EC, which they fondly termed the red devil, bright red one, and that makes you feel pretty rough, really, quite a lot of nausea.
I was there with my sister that day, and it was really incredible to have her there. It was at this time that the clumsy giantess appeared and was obviously me, but was also a me that could mind me. I was suspended between my own world and this place that was unfamiliar to me, and I was the only thing that both of those worlds knew.
Doing the chemo is pretty awful, I can't lie.
That was a long, tough battle because I could not take to the chemo. The chemo was my main problem. From day one, I was getting violently sick to the point that I'd have to be admitted to hospital.
I think I was supposed to have 20 rounds and we stopped at 16 because I just got a bit too ill.
It really was an infinite loop, that it was 3-week cycles for a reason. You'd be zapped with chemotherapy and the body immediately goes into toxic shock.
Almost worst side of it is that they give you a steroid each time, and that means you're just so wired, you're just awake, you don't sleep the day after you have it, you don't sleep at all through the night, and then you spend the next day and hopefully you sleep the night after that. But that on a weekly basis is quite tough.
It was during these months that everything I knew started to get dim. I was running away and running towards at the same time. Running stitch, running around, mending itself as it's unravelling. Mending and unravelling and mending and unravelling. My world became tiny.
I think it's full on the way the steroid makes you feel, and the combination of that and the chemo, it's quite a roller coaster.
I could nearly set my clock for 1 o'clock Friday. I knew it was kicking in then. The hell would start then for a few days.
Mentally, it makes you go a bit crazy.
But by the second session of chemo, I wasn't fit to walk. Very, very weak, very, very tired. Didn't want any communication really with anybody. Just wanted to be on my own because I found it too much hassle even nearly to talk to people. It just wiped me out completely.
And then by the second week, your body starts to very slowly regenerate and recover.
I could be brought under control very, very quickly, maybe in less than 12 hours.
And the body is really amazing that way, because by the third week, you're actually feeling slightly better and the body is working really hard to cure you. And then after week 3, your bloods are taken and you're zapped again.
But to say that the more effect it takes you, the better it's working, I don't know.
So it's this loop of absolute toxic shock and feeling really unwell, and then you start to feel a little bit better and you go back into the beginning stage again.
So then after that, I had a weekly chemo called paclitaxel, which works in a slightly different way, and the side effects of that are much more sort of peripheral neuropathy.
Towards the end of taking the chemotherapy, I was very weak and quite transparent.
And I says, under no circumstances, it'll either kill me or cure me.
And the world is very different. It's contextually a different dimension. Everything is at a different scale. You're seeing all of the things that are familiar to you, all of the people you love, but you're passing through them or tripping over them.
Thinking about the body as an extension of the land, dis-ease manifesting in our bodies expands and reaches dis-ease manifesting in land. As the body extends itself into the land extends itself back towards us in some kind of mutual exchange of tenderness. I remember this time as a space between, where day and night merged and the night became my ally. The back end of the moon, my North Star, bathing the things I collected in lunatic glow. The small hagstone, hawberries, an old man's beard, one feather from a disturbed crane, a tiny bird skull, sheep's wool untangled from barbed wire, the underside of a hart's tongue, giant kelp hold-fasted to a familiar rock. My kin helping me shake out the skirt of damage. Deeper emptiness than a cold cave I love. The spring under the holy well gurgles. My pockets are full of petals, dispersed and disappeared.
And then I went to have radiotherapy, and on my first day I was told that I was getting 3 tattoos for the target point for the beam, that those 3 tattoos could never move. So they were associated with numbers, and the numbers were checked every time I went in.
They had the black marker, all right, the different points marked, but it wore off after a few months.
I had then 21 rounds of radiotherapy. Compared to chemo, it was easy peasy for me. I got the chance to lie down.
Scar from the radio treatment, it lasted, in fact it's still slightly there. It isn't gone yet.
And that was quite a reflective, slow, gentle period of time, even though I was having this burning radiotherapy every day, apart from weekends.
At least you came home on Friday well rested, and you had the weekend to do whatever you wanted at home, and you went back on Monday, and you had the week to recover again.
It wasn't too bad. I had to have radiotherapy in 2 places.
Go home, go to sleep, and I'd get up and do that again the next morning.
And the fact that there could be still infected tissue, they couldn't do the radiation, so I missed the radiation completely.
The treatment continued. I finally finished the radiotherapy. Was really glad to finish that because it was such a cumulative effect. I was just exhausted all the time.
And of course, all of this time you're in the systems loop. Looking at the systems, looking at how the system rolls you through it and does a really good job and takes really good care of you. But it's really illusionary. It's like a mirage in a way, because once it's over, really solitary.
And that was it, and then it's sort of goodbye. And actually I felt quite sad to say goodbye to everyone in a weird way. That had become my world.
You just need to get through the day, get through the night, get through the pain. You don't think about metaphorical spiritual awakenings when you're just getting through it. It's too much stuff to take on. And so I didn't really process things psychologically. I just literally had nose to the grindstone. This year, it hit me for the first time. It slammed me.
Coming back into the world again, where you have will and you have choices and you have a sense of identity again. That's the trick at the moment, is that journey. For me, that's much more subtle and psychological.
The tamoxifen tips you straight into menopause, so I reduced my coffee intake to literally 1 coffee a day. I drank lots of water. I did more exercise.
It makes you feel very, very stiff and creaky, and all my joints hurt a lot, to the point where it's arthritis in my hands and my feet, and terrible lower back pain, and then huge amounts of sweat almost all the time.
It's so embarrassing when you're teaching and you just suddenly break out in a sweat.
I was just barely cognizant, like going through such severe menopausal symptoms.
Hence why HRT is so wonderful, but obviously that's going to be doing the opposite for me, so that's not something I can do. All we have now is to really try to treat these symptoms in various ways through alternative therapy, diet and food and this sort of thing.
Because your muscles have memory, my muscle in my chest now still remembers it being in my back, so I can't swim properly anymore.
For some women, they say it's worse than all of the breasts beforehand put together. This kind of long sentence of being in high menopause.
I was watching leaves of my identity fall away from me like a whole skin, shedded.
breasts are an important part of sex, I think. So losing the connection between the breast and pleasure is very weird.
And I ferociously forged kinship with nature, which gave me a place to be with my body, which in many ways had become a stranger. The one that I had before is one of the ghosts of myself that I'm carrying around.
But you feel like you've been away somewhere so enormous, and it really has levelled things out and made you see life in quite a different perspective.
Life after cancer will always be life after cancer for me. The story unwinds and is rewound and then unwinds again.
People shouldn't be allowed to put you into a stressful situation that any doctor will tell you that's the last thing you need after any of that, forever.
I'm just that sort of person who I'm not mourning what's gone. I'm trying to embrace what's here. I see everything as a learning experience, and that's how I'm continuing to go with it.
There really is no such thing as life as it was. That feels like quite a magical, dreamy place.
The only thing was the moment. I think that has been extremely transformational. Although I'm an artist anyway, but I really notice things now.
Maybe we're all holding ghosts of ourselves from before.